Welcome back. Episode 84 of the Grouch and the Brainstorm from Rule 62 Studios. And I'm Mike. I'm here with Jill.
Hey, guys.
Matt.
What's happening?
And we are here to do another episode. So we'll get around to the topic in a minute. So first off, we're gonna see how everyone is doing. So intergroup tonight. Does anybody know where it is?
No idea.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay.
We're on top of it.
Well, we stay on top.
Anything
of our,
else you need to know, Mike?
No.
We stay on top of our current events.
I can tell you one thing: none of the three of us are speaking at it, or serving food, or any of that other stuff. So that's a good thing. So, how you been, Matt?
Man, good. Overwhelmed with work. Just dark to dark, past dark. So I actually mowed in the straight dark for an hour and a half the other night. I don't know what that place looks like. I may get fired. I don't know. But I just did what I had to do. Yeah, it probably looks terrible. I'll be honest.
The thing is, you try not to mow your own yard in the middle of the night, and you'll be okay.
This was a rough piece of property, and they were begging, and they had pictures. They were doing drone pictures for us selling it, and they're like, it was like a last minute thing. And I was like, there's only 4 hours of daylight left in the day, and it was about a 6 hour mow. And they're like, it has to be done. I said,
so
okay.
This was acres.
Yes, it was 5 point something acres.
Oh,
yes.
okay.
And but yes, and
I can
so
do the point something acre. But
that's what they said. I don't do that. I just do it by tanks of fuel. That's what I do it
they
by.
Keep the other 5.
That's a 1 tank yard, 2 tank yard. But this was yeah. So that was a new one. Mowing in the dark. Mm-hmm. So. It's kind of probably how Ray Charles feels mowing his yard.
Well,
So,
yeah,
Oh, no.
yeah, I can. Can only. I
guess
had a 0 turn back then.
I don't know what he had. Probably
love my 0 turn.
Probably that mower like the Brady Bunch had when they mowed their AstroTurf. That thing with the blades on it.
Those still
What's
exist.
that spinning wheel thingy?
Yeah, you can still buy those, and
Yeah.
It's just like a bunch of blades hooked to the wheel, and as you go, it just kind of
Like a cylinder, kind of like.
yeah.
I've had some old guys tell me that, and I mow grass, and I've seen them. I ought to know what they're called, but they said that's the best cut you can get on a yard, and I'm like, I'm just not that intense with it. Let's just knock the top out of it.
I would
roll.
imagine the best cut you could get would be with a comb and a pair of scissors.
Yeah.
You really wanted to get down to
True.
it, and
So yeah,
get around the edges of your yard with some scissors. My grandfather used to have these giant scissors, like I don't know what they're called. I guess you could call them clippers, and it was like this giant pair of scissors that had the inverted handle, and you could he would get it. He would take an axe,
shrubs.
and they lived in the middle of the city, over in Cedar Grove, part of Shreveport. And he would go around the yard with an axe, like where the sidewalk connects to the grass, and he would chop, and it'd be a perfect line. And,
Wow.
And they had this grass. I guess it's called Bermuda, something. And, real thick, luscious grass, and
Ooh, I want that.
yeah, it's actually pleasant to lay down on.
Yeah.
If you're a kid, I guess if you're an adult and you're laying down on it, you probably got some.
I mean, there's some, I've been doing this 15 years. There's some people that spend piles of money on their yard. I'm fixing to go to a guy's house in a minute, and he has zoysia, is what it's called, and it's like a blanket at your house.
Oh, I want that.
And it doesn't grow. It's very slow growing. They only mow like
nice.
every 6 weeks.
I think mine's just a collection of weeds that's
Yes,
mowed,
that's what
and
most
it
people's are.
appears
Yeah,
to be grassy.
Well, like even their yard, they have their own mower, and it only mows a specific section of the yard because they don't want to get in the outer line property and get weeds in the mower and then spread it to the yard.
Oh,
so
and
like
forbid
this
your
mower,
food touch.
yeah.
Oh,
And so
well,
Fancy.
I know.
it is very fancy. Yes. So there's some folks like that. I'm more of the old just knock the top out of it. Let's get out of here.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
go
yeah.
watch football.
So, Jill, when I got here, me and her walked out back. She was showing me some stuff, and her pigs are calling her as we're out there.
Yeah, one of them dapped me up when I was walking up the sidewalk. It was weird. I don't know.
They just
They're trained.
They start squealing.
They squeal.
Well, they know their mama's there, and they know they associate me with food. If you also look at them, they start foaming at the mouth, and that's what they do when they. It's classical conditioning,
Reminds me of
classic conditioning, or
that
whatever.
movie, Silence of the Pigs, or whatever it was called.
Lambs.
Lamb, whatever. Not a single lamb in the whole movie.
But
by the way,
that third one, they kicked that guy in that pig pen.
Sure enough.
Yeah.
Cannibal.
Cannibal, and the pigs tore him up.
There's a part 3.
There's like 2 or
Oh,
3 of them.
I
Yeah.
hadn't seen that.
Yeah, that's some of the best.
Anthony Hopkins in it.
Yeah. And that dude's been sober like 5 million years. and
He's actually I want to say he's in his late 80s, like 88
yeah.
years old.
You know, he's on speaker tapes out of his group.
Him and Danny Trejo, and there's a lot of them that have been sober. Danny Trejo's been sober over 50 years. I do know that. And these guys are, well, they've had to get sober young.
Yeah.
I mean, just it had to be at an early age because, well, one, they're still alive, and so they were 30 something maybe when they got sober.
I listened to his story when I first got sober, and it was really good, and it was one of those things. He was pretty young when he did it, but
I mean, we were still young.
Yeah, 38. I mean, technically, if I lived to be 88, I could get 50 years.
Yeah, exactly. And
That's a long time. Not the sober community in general, but just the world in the past month has just lost a whole lot of people.
these past couple of weeks was a little. I think personally, there were about 6 people I knew that passed.
Yeah, and I mean, not
A lot.
being. We don't know them and they pass doesn't mean they're any less important, but just people
Right.
that just in general, just for some reason, it's that time where a lot of folks just leave. You
Yeah.
know? It's kind of like the reforestation of the manhood,
Oh, okay.
kind of thing, or humanhood, I should say. So, but a lot of death lately going on. And then, so what else is going on with you, Jill?
Well, I don't know if I said this last time, but I've accepted a position at a maximum security prison. Should be starting that in the next couple of weeks. I'm really excited.
Might want to reword that because there's a certain position at maximum security prisons folks don't like to accept.
I'm just a counselor.
that'd be bottom bunk or
I know.
Been over? I don't know.
Y'all hush. I'm really excited. This is a really big DOC camp. And I will be over segregation. They have a whole dorm of people that are segregated. They're the most violent offenders. So that is where I'll be doing mental health.
Wow.
Yeah.
yeah.
So prayers.
So basically, Hannibal Lecter will be there.
Yeah. And like I said, it's maximum security, a lot of lifers and, terminally ill guys.
So do you like in that line of work? If a dude's in there, this is just a redneck, okay. But if a dude's in there for life and he's crazy, I just be like, well, he ain't getting out anyway, But y'all work with him, right? Like,
Absolutely.
Really?
Well, I mean, like our job is to serve
them.
and we want them to, be treated with dignity and respect.
Sure.
And so it's important to give them that and be there for them in times of need.
I guess I just never thought about that. Like I get guys that are getting out and they're trying to do better and learn skills and all that stuff. But like, yeah, dude in there with life, but that makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
and I guess it helps their behavior with everybody else in there too while they're there too. So
Right. And from what I've heard, everybody's like, that's a whole nother beast. And I was like, we'll just see about that.
yeah.
Well,
I'm excited. I'm
excited for
really
you.
excited.
and we knew it. I mean, I wasn't going to bring it up on the air unless
Yeah.
you were ready to talk about it. So, good deal. Congratulations. And they're getting you a good one. They're getting a good one. So, hey, it's a win-win for you and them.
It is. I'm
Going to be pretty cool.
blessed for sure.
I mean, if I was going to go to jail and have to do life, I would want to go to the one Jill was at. You know what I'm saying?
Thanks, guys.
That's the best compliment I can get.
And assume the position.
Yes. Jill would get me right in there, so
You got to look on
I
it.
just don't
Not
know what
in-
to say to that.
It's never too late, man.
well, yeah,
You might end up out there as well.
I mean, hey,
Please don't.
I watch a lot of documentaries about, I'm around like a lot of smart people and they're like, what'd y'all watch last night? And they're like, well, watch this about Neil deGrasse Tyson or whatever. And I'm going, man, I watched something on how to make a shank in prison. That's what I was watching.
Yeah.
So
I mean, seriously.
just in case,
out of a pen
yeah, like
that
I
you
can
made out of dried glue.
how to break out of
They don't
jail.
get pens.
Yeah.
unless they buy. But toothbrushes.
I said it made
Oh,
out
yeah.
of dry glue.
They can stab the crap out of you with a toothbrush too. I've seen that one where they
Yeah.
sharpen them up. You know,
No,
the
let's not
plastic.
give anybody any ideas. There.
No, it's common knowledge. Oh yeah, that's a common one.
Anybody that's ever seen Shawshank Redemption.
You know what's amazing to me though is like you see that stuff and you're like, how do these guys that are that much ingenuity to they're smart enough to figure out these things in a little bit of a different turn, and they'd be doing other things that are productive and like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
What? Yeah, because I get to look at all the stuff that's confiscated, and I'm like, I'll be in the investigator's office, and I'll be like, "What the hell is that?" He's like, "That's a tattoo gun." I'm like, "I don't understand. Like, where would you even start with that?"
Now they say that they use ashes and melted plastic of some sort to make the ink for a tattoo.
Tattoo gun.
Yeah, for the ink that they use.
They had tattoo guns in the rehab I was in.
Whoa.
Yes, and it was a big deal because they let us have electric shavers, and that's the number one tattoo gun. That's like hitting the lottery.
Is that how you got that one on the side of your head?
Yes, yes. and
The mama on your neck.
it's yeah. I got a friend that has his birthday on his neck, like his actual birthday. I'm like, that's an odd one to pick. You know,
Never change.
I guess it's just in case he forgets, he can look in the mirror. But
Unlike
okay.
a sobriety date, that'll never
no,
change.
it wasn't a sobriety date. It was his actual birthday.
Belly button
So, yeah,
birthday.
yeah.
Let me tell you something. The tattoos I've seen in prison, God bless. I
Yeah.
mean, triple X. I asked an inmate once, what does the rest of that tattoo say? I wish I'd
Hadn't.
ever.
Yeah,
I wish I'd
yeah.
never ever asked, because one was above his lip and the other part was below his lip, and I
Oh.
couldn't see it. And then
Yeah.
I just was like, oh,
That's the old dinosaur.
It's the old Mr. Ed, they call that, you know.
Yeah.
it was horrible.
I remember you telling me about that.
Sorry, I'm
no.
gonna start laughing. I can't stop.
I remember that.
You know, too, the tattoo gun thing, that's another thing. Is like, how smart is somebody to be able to put that together and then make tattoos, you know, and like out of nothing, just stuff.
That's what I'm
just
saying.
junk.
Like, how?
It's like, why can't we do something positive, you know, and figure out something, use that brain for something else, you
Well, I
know?
mean, the brain might not have been idle until it was forced to be idle.
True.
So, and then once the creativity comes out, I mean, if you think about it, man, if you had all day, every day to sit around and think about stuff, you might.
I still would never come up with anything remotely close that could give you a tattoo.
You might not, you know, but everything we have, you know, even the microphones we're talking into the machine we're recording on, someone had to think it up and put it all together.
Isn't that weird? That's really will blow your mind. I just don't think like that.
I'm still trying to figure out the first person who ever got milk from a cow. What were they doing? You know what I mean?
Right. What were you doing down there?
Yeah, I mean, come on.
One of them perverts, you
And
know?
why the cow? You know, did we try all these other animals and it just didn't work?
Clearly.
This armadillo ain't working.
It's something that don't run from us whenever we mess with its teats. So it wasn't a whole lot of choices there. It was just a cow, you know. And then the buffalo came along and goat. We had some.
Goat's milk. I was raised on goat's milk.
I've never had it. You know, I'm sure oat milk. Think about it. There's a thing called oat milk.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I have
someone actually milked an oat. And that's in itself is.
I got
What?
questions on that, you know?
I mean, how hard do you got to squeeze an oat for milk to come out of it? You know, I mean,
And how many oats do you have to like make enough to make a bottle of milk?
Seems like there'd be a lot.
Yeah.
well, there's fields full of oats. I can't guarantee you I've ever seen an oat in the wild. You know, but just out hunting and run across an oat.
A sprig of oats.
Yeah, like whoa, why am I hunting for meat?
Holy
when
crap, there's a
oat?
bunch of oats over here.
You know, and we have the song of, you know, the America song, and they talk about amber waves of grain.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh
I
my
wouldn't,
gosh. Really? Grain?
I wouldn't know.
Oh my God. My whole life I thought it was amber waves of gray.
Yeah, you were
Grain.
You were 49 years old when you found out the truth, there, Jill.
Welcome to America, Jill.
Yeah.
We're glad you're here.
So, I'm going to Alaska in 2 weeks. No, actually, I'm going to Alaska a week from Tuesday. And me and my son are going, right? So I said, he's off work right now because of the new baby. You know, Emily was born probably 6 or 7 weeks ago, and he's off work, and he has some spare time. You know, he has a lot more time than I do because you know, the past 8 or 9 days, I have woke up every morning and got there at 7 and left every night between 10 and 11. Every day of the week, except for last Saturday. And after I left here, I went back to work over in Dallas and worked another hour or two. So to get ready for inventory. But anyway, he's got a little bit more time right now than I have. And I said, I want you to plan this trip out. You know, I'll take care of everything. You just kind of plan it out. So he draws it all out. So we're gonna fly from DFW to PDX, Portland Airport in Portland, Oregon. Then we're going to drive from Portland up to Seattle, and we're going to visit Mount Rainier, and then we're going to go back to SeaTac, and we're going to fly to Juneau, okay? Then we're going to drive from Juneau to Anchorage, which is a 19-hour drive, and then we're going to fly from Anchorage back to DFW. And he put all this together, okay? Here you go, Dad. So I get on the computer, and I book all the plane tickets, and I say, here's the plane tickets. Now find us cars, right? And because we got to find one that takes me from Juneau to Anchorage that I can just one-way it. So he gets on, calls me, hey, I got the cars booked. Or here's the stuff you need to book the cars. I booked them in your name. We pay when you get there. And so I'm thinking, you know, we're ready to roll on that front. You know, all I got to do is pack some clothes, very minimum stuff I'm going to take. You know, usually just a bag for the trips me and him take. And so I get it all together, and last night I got home from work, I don't know, 10:30, and I was laying there in bed, and I couldn't sleep. You know, I was too tired to sleep, really. So I'm looking at my phone, and I want to look at some of the stuff we may see on this 19-hour drive from Juneau to Anchorage. And so I Google drive Juneau to Anchorage, you know. And the Reddit posts pop up and basically just says, you know, can't do it. It's impossible right now. One, you got to ride a ferry for 5.5 hours. And don't get excited, Matt. That's a big boat. That's a big boat. You got to ride a ferry for 5.5 hours. And then that's only if the ferry's running. And basically the people on Reddit said, you're absolutely crazy if you do it anytime later than October the 1st, because your chances of getting into some really bad stuff on that 19-hour trip are, you know, so if the ferry is running, you're going into dangerous territory.
Icebergs.
Well, I don't know. What you're running into dangerous territory, right? Just whatever.
Bears.
I don't know if icebergs just randomly pop out in the middle of the road, but
I meant on the ferry ride.
bear, moose,
Woolly mammoths.
woolly mammoth, stuff like that. You know, dragons, you know, unicorns, stuff that may get you. You know, you have a shark attack.
Hey, they say moose
or a
kill
shark attack.
more people than the bears do.
Well, and
The
that
moose will jack you up.
moose
Polar
is huge.
bears.
I've seen them in person.
They are huge.
But so I text him and I was like, hey, you need to research this a little bit better, you know? So anyway, long story short, he comes back and like, yeah, dude, you probably can't do it. I'm like, good thing I was on there, man. So we're going to actually fly to Portland, drive to Seattle, fly from Seattle straight to Anchorage. And then straight from Anchorage back to DFW. So we basically took a whole flight out of that and a 19-hour trip. So that's going to be a, you know.
That'd be fun, man.
Yeah.
It sounds amazing.
It's going to be pretty cool as long as.
Yeah, it'll be cool.
You know, I hope the weather's not so bad we can't get around and look at stuff. I don't know.
Have you been to Alaska before?
I lived in Alaska.
But I'm sure it's just like
really?
Colorado.
Yeah, I
Like
lived in Anchorage when I was a kid.
you just do it anyway. You get the shovel, you know, they get out the plows and you just go.
So Jill brings up an interesting point, okay, because we're 20 minutes into this podcast. You used to live in Colorado.
I did.
And was you in recovery in Colorado?
Yes, I was. I was about 6 years sober.
Oh, okay.
6 years sober.
So a pretty good bit of time.
Yes.
And you moved from Colorado to where?
Well, I was sober when I moved there. I was living in Monroe and I moved to Colorado, lived there for a couple of years, and then I moved back to Shreveport,
Okay.
where I'm originally from. So that altogether, that was 8 years I was gone from my hometown with two, I wouldn't call them like a lot of people like to call them as geographical changes, expecting this cure. It was just me kind of following my dreams.
Big Book actually, in one of the personal stories, describes them as geographics.
Yeah.
Whenever you move in order to try to leave your addiction behind.
Yeah, and that wasn't the case because, but I mean, I learned so much about myself through these, moving and stuff.
Yeah.
Especially at like around 8 years, and I had to like really, sink into working on me again.
So moving
Yes.
during recovery, right? Mm-hmm. That's going to be what we're going to talk about tonight. Okay. So, and Matt, I don't know if you've ever moved during recovery. I guess moving from home to home, moving across town, moving cities, just changing your environment that you live in. I have moved a ton.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're I'll go in a little bit, but you, like when you moved you had a home group?
Yes, I had a home group I was incredibly active in Monroe. And
that's where you got sober.
yes, that's where I got sober.
Okay. And then you moved to Colorado.
Yes, and I even like before I left, like Googled like the meetings at Estes, and there was one meeting.
Yeah. The Shining
Hope
meeting.
it's a good one.
Right. Yeah. Well, and that was the thing. I got there and I immediately went there, and it was a very, very small group. Same people. Tourists were there quite a bit, but I didn't.
Same people in the Google search, or the same what? What do you mean?
Same people at the meeting.
Oh, same people every day, basically.
Oh yeah. And I wasn't going exactly daily, but the handful of times that I did go, I wasn't exactly. I came from a pretty big, sober area with a lot of people and a lot of socializing to where there was none practically.
Yeah.
I felt like nothing added up to the recovery I was used to. And there were a couple old men that just constantly just bitched about the tourists. And I was just like, gosh.
Pretty much all we have as far as outside.
Well, I mean, like, especially in the wintertime, there's only a couple thousand people there. And it's just a summer town. But I, had some friends in recovery up there, and I started going to a meeting down the canyon in Boulder. And that was about a 45-minute drive. So if the meeting's at 8 o'clock, we'd leave at 7, drive all the way down the canyon, go to the meeting for an hour, eat afterwards on Pearl Street, and then drive back up. And we'd be home really late.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of sobriety in Boulder, a lot of people, and I had fun, but it just wasn't the same.
So how far is Boulder from Estes?
45 minutes.
That ain't bad. So
Well, you're driving up and down a canyon that is nothing but switchbacks. I mean, can be a little bit more stressful than just a normal drive
sure
down the
I know
road.
what a switchback is, but I think it's those guys in Star Wars that chase you
this.
down, shaking a stick. Oh, okay.
Zigzagging all the way up and around
So
the
it's
canyon.
no straight lines. Really.
No, none. Absolutely. And I mean, like, sobriety was good there. I really, really got into nature, and I was on trails every day, and I had a really good, group of friends that supported me. And of course, my friends back here supported me, and I had a lot of visitors come and stay with me and all. But, I just think I just started going to less and less meetings, and I started getting less and less happy. And I was
sense.
like, and towards the end, and I made some changes with something else, and a really good friend of mine died, and I just wasn't doing well towards the end. I'd been there about 2 years, and I was just like, I don't think I can't stay here any longer.
So to put this into perspective, so Estes is where The Shining was filmed, right?
Yes,
At
or
that
the hotel.
Stanley Hotel.
Yes, the Stanley.
Boulder is where Mork and Mindy were supposed to be located, on Mork and Mindy back in the early 80s, if you don't remember.
Yeah, I really didn't watch that. I don't think we had a TV at that point.
Yeah, a lot of folks in Colorado
Aspen is where those guys off
From
Dumb and Dumber were trying to get.
ended up. And then you have Denver, of course, where
Yeah, they were never in Aspen.
John Denver. Oh, yeah.
They were in Estes Park.
Is that where they filmed it?
Yes.
Who was?
Dumb and Dumber.
Jim
Oh, really?
Carrey
Yeah,
and
yeah.
the other guy.
Like the hotel,
yeah.
that's the Stanley. I went to that bar just to sit in the same seat he sat in.
He said a raging alcoholic.
For a friend of mine,
When he looks at that girl, he's like, I don't care.
friend of mine got married, and they went straight there for their honeymoon.
Yeah, yeah.
So you left Boulder, or I'm sorry, you left Estes and
Mm-hmm.
went where?
Shreveport.
Okay.
And this is the first time I'd been home. I mean, like, to live. And I think that was great, being away from Shreveport for 8 years, because it was kind of like scary for me, because I partied on every corner and it just was kind of surreal. But I really dove into recovery when I came back.
And you went to the Highland Club.
I was going to Young People's. I was going to Yaya's, Winners, the Highland Club occasionally. I was going to a lot of, Friday Night Lights.
So how did you adapt? You just jump right in?
I jumped right in and made friends pretty quickly, but still at the same time, like, it wasn't the same. And it's just hard when you leave that group of people you've known for so many
is
years.
tough.
The people that saw you got sober. And what's really weird is when you are 8 years sober and you go into a meeting and you're all of a sudden like a newcomer.
Yeah. People.
And people are like, keep coming back. And you're just like, what?
What?
You know, when you came to the Koala Club and visited that first 1 or 2 times you were there, I said something to you because I thought you were somebody else. And I was like, hey, don't you go over here or whatever? And then I realized it wasn't you, but still, that's how we met was,
Yeah.
but
To be honest with you, even at 8 years, it is a really good excuse when you move, to not go to meetings. And it sucks. It sucks having to, especially when you're established in a group and you can go in and you feel comfortable. You don't feel anything. You just go in like you're going into your grandma's house, sitting down and getting a cup of coffee or tea, right? It ain't, and then you have to go in, you don't know anybody there. Then you're going to have to share. And then somebody goes before you, that has all this great stuff to share, and then you feel like a newcomer.
Well, I mean, like, and I got shy. I get shy sometimes, and I'd get irritable because, people aren't coming up to me and introducing themselves, which is, stupid on my, I have the same ability to do the exact same thing, but it was hard.
Yeah.
And it was very challenging. I don't necessarily like that feeling of, not knowing anybody.
Yeah, I remember when you first came to the Koala Club, and you would actually sit right there on the front row.
Yeah.
And then, and we don't have assigned seating. You can go into any club anywhere and sit wherever you want, but generally everybody sits in the same spot every day, no matter what.
Oh, yeah.
And Jill sat there on the front row, and then of course you gave your sobriety date, and I guess out of habit, once you hear it's longer than your sobriety date, you kind of perk up and listen. You go, okay, let's hear what they got.
So you're saying you don't listen to me, Mike, when I'm sharing? Is that?
I listen.
I wouldn't listen to me either.
I critique you. No. One of the first things you do when you go to these new places, and especially if it's going to be a possible home group situation that you could end up going to 5 days a week, right?
Yeah.
First thing I try to do is figure out who the genius is. There's always a genius in every one of them. There's that one person that just starts, and you figure out who that is, and then you can kind of get a feel for how spiritual the thing's going to be. Or do we talk about the big book, or do we talk about real life situations? Do we talk about our problems, or do we talk about the solution? Some meetings don't put up with anything but the solution. They do not want to hear the problem.
Oh, for sure.
And then some meetings will let you ramble on about your job and your car and your kids and relationships and finances and all this other stuff. And and for the most part, the one we go to, you can talk about whatever you want to. 5:30 over at the Koala Club, right? You can just talk about whatever. You just,
And I like that meeting. I mean, I came in, I found who the winners were, and
And you
gravitated.
stuck with these two right here.
and I've been
Her
stuck with
picker's
them ever
broke.
since. Well, yeah, in so many other ways.
She gravitated
You know,
right here.
too, saying that about meetings and not so much relocating. Like I got out of treatment and we moved to another state. And so I started my recovery in the same place I was starting a new job, a new city, which I had grown up here, but it had been 30 years since I lived here. And makes me feel old saying that. And maybe not 30, 25. But that kind of all went together, you know, as far as it kind of all grew together. But I will say this, and you guys are further along in this, and Jill kind of brought this to, I've been thinking about this a lot lately, and it came up today. Us being in the city, we got a lot of meetings, we got a lot of groups, we got all that stuff. It's great. And I get, even though my home group is a 5:30, I like to go sit in those different ones. Now, I'm not joining them as a home group. I like to just random go to something 8 o'clock on Tuesday night in Shreveport. If I'm over that way and eating dinner and I go, you know what, there's a meeting over here, and just go sit. I don't have to say nothing. I enjoy that. And it's kind of a, I don't know, get out of a routine. I get in those ruts, you know, and just, I'm going to sit in the same spot. I'm going to listen to the same people share, you know, and something, you know, I usually enjoy them, but I don't mind going in and sitting at a weird, not
Yeah.
weird, but a different meeting.
I like to see what the new ones do as far as their, how do I put it? Their agenda, maybe, you know, because some groups will have a whole different agenda. When I moved to New Orleans, the first thing I noticed was there are two people sitting at the table. You have a chairperson and you have a moderator, right? And I had never seen that in any meeting. And any meeting down there you go to just about has a chairperson who does all the readings, and then you have a moderator, and they announce the moderator, and the moderator picks the topic. Yeah,
okay.
yeah, and you know, and it's just like it is here.
Yeah.
where the chairperson has a day, and then you know nobody wants to walk in first because they don't have anybody already planned, so they just pick a moderator out of the crowd. You know, hey, Mike, you want to moderate tonight? And you're like, yeah, sure, yeah. And you're in your back of your head, you're going, shit, I got to think of something. You know, I got to come up with something. You know, can't go wrong just opening the big book and start reading. You know, but that was, you know, that was something different.
And two, now I'm losing my train of thought on what I was saying, but moving in those different meetings and different things, and even at our club, this happened today. I went by the club earlier today. Dana was sitting in there. We were talking, and I'd had somebody call me in the 8 o'clock meeting on Thursday night. They haven't had it in 6 weeks. Nobody's been able to do it. They haven't had one. And so somebody else had called me, and I asked her, I said, what's going on with that? We don't have that. She goes, no, nobody's there to do it. And I said, well, I'll do it. I just felt like it gets me out of a rut and gets me into something new. And that meeting, the Bossier group's totally different. They crosstalk. You can share. You don't have to introduce yourself. They have a whole written out set of rules, and it's just like,
Very old meeting.
yeah, and we're sitting around talking like we're talking now. That's the way that meeting is. And I did that meeting a year ago for 90 days for somebody. I did the Thursday night, and I enjoyed it. And it hit me today sitting there, and I was like, I need to like just shake it up a little bit. So I'm kind of fired up about
Yeah.
it.
I mean, I enjoy going to a different meeting, different places. But like when you know, like you've moved in this is your option, you know, and something about like,
You're almost, this is what I have to do.
well, it's like you do this.
Yeah.
And like my defiant nature is like, but I don't want to. It was another part of, you know, of Estes. I was, even though I had like a really good group of friends and they all worked with them all, I was horribly lonely.
I can see that.
And that was something I hadn't necessarily addressed in my recovery because I'd been lonely my whole recovery and pretty much all my life. You know,
Now you got Chunk and Bud.
well, I mean, like, but that's something internally that I had to work on. And, you know, when I left Colorado, you know, I'd been chasing after all of these things like, you know, jobs, because this is basically me starting my life over. Like, I need to go back to school. I need to do things. And after all of that stopped, I was back in Shreveport and I realized, like, damn, I have the credentials, you know, I have my degrees, and what I just work now, and
That's it.
And so I kind of freaked out. But yeah, I did the steps. about 8 years ago or 7 years ago. I don't even know how long I've been here. I moved back in 2018 on loneliness because like my heart was hurting so bad up in Colorado, and I haven't been lonely since.
Yeah.
It's been like miraculous, but a lot of people move for reasons like I wanted to go because my family's from Colorado, and I mean like since the 1800s, and that's like my roots and stuff. And
Is this on the L side or both sides?
my dad's side.
So the L side. Okay.
The L side. Like, I love it. Like, part of my heart's still there, but it just revealed a whole new level of stuff to me. I was on my own and I was stuck with me. And man, I mean, like, I needed that. I needed that emotional growth.
Now you're talking about working the steps on loneliness, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was miraculous. I mean, I learned how to love me, like truly love me, and I learned what solitude was. I don't know. That was life changing.
How many years sober were you when you did that?
8 years.
Yeah, because I had to. I'm way better than I was, but I had to learn to like. It's got to be okay with me. In other words, I've got to be able to sit there in my own thoughts, and that's a big deal in sobriety. I think it's just a big. You start out and you're like, hey, I got to clean up my mess, and you're trying to do all that, but then you realize, oh, there's a mess sitting right here that I've ignored this whole time.
Well, it was like
Or
stuff.
the ones you've created since.
Yeah, and like, yeah, it's just interesting. to hear
In
you
a
say that.
sense, I mean, like maybe I was running.
I mean,
And I feel like I was chasing, I don't know, like stuff, but I just, and I'd been working on myself, I mean, tremendously for all those years, but a lot of those just trying to get your head straight. And that was something huge because I knew that like my core character defect was self-pity. And so like and I'd been working on that for a long time, but I'd never addressed the loneliness and the sadness that was, and I think Estes unfortunately drew that out of me to a point like
had to do it.
I have to do
got
this.
into enough pain to where you did something about it.
Yeah. And I'm not lying. Miraculous.
But y'all, and you guys listen, I love sitting in here with these two because, and also my son Landry's in here. He's not saying anything today. His sobriety date is, what year? 2011. He's never had a drink or drug, so he has no comment on any of this. It's cool to sit in here with you guys and hear the growth that y'all go through years into recovery of doing stuff, because I'm following behind y'all. So y'all don't even realize a lot of times how much I hear and I go, oh, okay. And I got something in my head about, I'm off on something, or I feel something's not. And it's cool to be at that point today because I didn't ever work on anything back then. I just like, we'll just dump some more wild turkey on it. That ought to fix it,
Right.
And now I can kind of start to identify stuff, and I go, I don't like that. And I don't like the way that feels. But I've gotten to the point where I can think about it. I can sit with it and go, this doesn't feel good. And I don't panic. I don't go, this is gonna last forever. It's over with. I don't do all that, and I know that there's a solution to fix it. And then I get with guys like us, people like us, and I start to work through that, and then get a sponsor I have a sponsor and do those type things and figure that out.
Yeah. Yeah. And what I think about the biggest move and the biggest threat of when it comes to, we talk about this move is when I moved to treatment, and which was in 2010. And I stayed there. I stayed in good old Rayville, and I lived in a halfway house and lived in a little town outside of there. And, like they say, you have to change people, places, and things. And this may be for that newcomer that's having to move away. That was, just beyond daunting. I didn't want to be friends with the girls I knew, with the girls I met in treatment. I did not relate to any of them. I was, terminally unique.
Yeah.
And
Some of whom have been on the show before. I mean,
I know, no.
you hadn't had none of them on here.
No, there's not many of them that I talk to.
Do you still talk to any of them?
Yes.
Okay, well, that's good.
Yeah, there's a couple.
I need to get 'em on the
There's
show.
one that I talked to. Well, she lives in Seattle. She just moved, or
And there's
Oregon
another
or
one
something.
that I know that I've asked her before. She's supposed to let us know your medical friend that I worked with. Your roommate.
Oh, no. I thought you meant, yes, she knew me. But yeah, I mean, that was really difficult. And I remember going to meetings and not wanting to talk to people, not, wanting to sit on the back row. And, not only that, being like incredibly socially inept and nervous. And I don't know how to talk to people sober. And it took me many years to get past that. I say like 3.
But we're talking about and learning to be uncomfortable in sobriety and do things that are uncomfortable. The first year that I came into AA and got out of treatment, I sat in the Koala Club and I don't think I ever said a word. And now y'all know me, I don't never shut up. But I was terrified. Like I was like, I don't know what to say. I would almost have a panic. My 1 year chip, I didn't even tell my sponsor it was my 1 year. And I just get up and go get a chip. And he's like, what the hell? And I'm like, hey, I ain't doing all this. I don't want nobody know. Yeah, I'm just
And you
rolling out.
blame it on humility.
Yeah, I'm so humble.
This is how humble
Mike.
I am.
But but that just goes back to we do things just like that 8 o'clock meeting. That's past my bedtime, or I wish it was past my bedtime. But it's good for me to get out of that comfort thing and get into some places that I hadn't been in a while or whatever to kind of sharpen things up a little bit and make me tighten up. And but I got where I still didn't really share in meetings. And a guy, James, at our club did what he facilitated getting people to a treatment center to do a meeting on Saturday nights. And he made an announcement and he said, I was about 18 months sober. And he said, if anybody wants to volunteer to go to this treatment center, we need people. And I thought, man, I'm going to do that. I'm terrified. Okay. I go up there and do it. He's like, sure, I'll get you. Immediately I go over there. I meet this guy I don't even know. He's been sober like 30 years. He's like, don't worry about it, man. No big deal. We're just going to, we do sit up front. Everybody's kind of looking at you, but I'll handle it. I do this all the time. You just kind of chime in with whatever you want. And I'm literally about to throw up. Okay. Mm-hmm. We go in, we sit down. They're all looking at us and he says his name and he goes, and there's a big clock on the wall in front of us. And he goes, and this is Matt. He's going to tell us about himself. 59 and a half minutes to go.
Oh.
And I went, oh, and you could hear the clock ticking. But you know what? I just worked through it. Yeah. And that's been a growth thing for me, and just getting more comfortable with,
I think it's like for everybody though. I mean, like there's so many things that we haven't done sober. We're grown men and women, and we're, I don't know whatever age you are, and there's a lot of things that I learned too. I mean, I learned how to adapt, how to be, I've always been outgoing, but to public speaking, I never thought I'd be a public speaker.
I can say this, AA, if you do it to the point everybody does, it will make a public speaker out of it.
Yeah, right.
Because once you've told your story, somebody is going to want you to tell it at their clubhouse, and then somebody's going to want to hear it at their clubhouse. And before you know it, you have people that have been sober for, we had Jonathan, right? And he had been sober longer than me, and he had never told a story.
I know.
And, and I told my story, I think I was about 1 year and 4 months when I told my story for the first time.
Mike and I go to New Orleans. He's telling this story like 1 year or 2 ago.
Yeah,
we go down to this thing in New Orleans. I've only told mine maybe one time, so I'm nervous for Mike, okay? And it's a convention, and he's all dressed up. He's got his bow tie on, looking clean. And so they have food there, and all that stuff. And I go up to Mike, and I'm like, hey, you good? You good? And he's eating a cookie, and he goes, did you know this is a cookie inside of a cookie? And I'm like, yeah, I know, but like, are you nervous? And he's looking at me like, what are you talking about, dude? Look at this cookie. And I'm like, never mind. He's fine.
They really did have cookies inside of cookies. Like
that was nice play.
Mike, you can get down on some cookies.
Yeah, I got to admit, man.
I ordered some crumble cookies the other night. God bless.
Cookie problem going on. But
yeah.
So I've relocated a bunch, and I moved from Bossier City, Louisiana, over to West Monroe, Louisiana, right? That was my first relocation. And I tried a couple of meetings there, and I just didn't dig it because it wasn't what I compared my everyday meeting to. So for 2.5 years, I drove that 90 miles one way every day to go to the 5:30.
You're a nut like that.
I did. I put 118,000 miles on that car in that 2-year period, and I drove. And so my routine was, I left work, gave it an hour and a half. I got there around 5:25. And some days there was traffic, but most time not. I got there around 5:25. I left about 6:30, and I was home every night at 8:00. And then in bed by 10. Up, do it again, and I did that every day. And on Sundays, I would spend the whole day at the club. That was my day off. I would spend the whole day at the Koala Club, going to the 9:00, the 12 back then, and the 5:30, and then I would go home. And that was my thing. And so I moved to New Orleans next, right? Or I moved to Covington, which is a city about 20 miles north of New Orleans. But I moved there. The thought occurred to me, I could drive the 4.5 hours every day, and then but that'd be. And then I was like, split second thinking that's not sustainable.
No,
that is so. I looked up the local clubhouse. I went over there. I drove around. I looked, see who was going in and what kind of people there. Everybody hangs,
sketchy looking.
well, everybody hangs out on the bench, like at the Koala Club. Very few, mainly the smoking people, hang out on the bench, and everybody else just goes in. And so I finally just said, you know what, I'm gonna have to do this. I do not want
The walk of shame.
It was horrible. It was absolutely horrible. And my first time, I sat down next to a guy. His name is Mike. And I didn't know it, obviously, but I sat down next to him, and he's probably about 10 years older than me, right? Maybe 15, but I sat down next to him. He was smoking. He never once asked me. He acted like we had known each other, right? He just starts talking about whatever, job, work, whatever. And
Sounds like Randy T.
And I mean, I'm telling you, like, he made me feel so welcome. And finally I was like, well, I've never been here. I came from North Louisiana, and and I still to this day don't think he ever even asked me how long I've been sober. He just like, hey, we're fixing to go, come on in, and then I go in and sit, it's really not a back row there because it's kind of small front room. Sit back there, and you don't get up in the middle of the meeting because you don't know their protocol. You don't bring a Coke or anything, and but I realized if I talk in every meeting, the quicker I'll get to know these folks.
Exactly.
And so if I had a whole lot to share or I didn't, like whenever they ask if you're any guests from out of town, I'll raise my hand, and they were like, you want to introduce yourself? And my name is Mike. I'm an alcoholic. And today I'm going to introduce myself as a guest, but after this is going to be where I go to meetings. And I left it at that, and then of course, I would say it took 2 weeks to get to know just about all of the regular people.
Seriously?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
When I'm not the, whatever you call it, the moderator or the person that's running the meeting, one of my favorite AA moments, and I've sat in a bunch of meetings, y'all, and I know y'all have too. So this just makes me laugh and giggle inside. But I love when they say, anybody from out of town or a newcomer here? And somebody raise their hand, and then they stand up and they go, my name's Earl.
Yeah.
I was born on a dark stormy night. And you're like, we're about to get the whole. This just turned into a
I feel like that
speaker
has
meeting.
happened a lot.
Oh, it does.
I got a DUI. My wife told me I probably need to come down here.
Yeah, she's mean, and and they go into the whole deal, and it's like, we just need your name, bud. That was all. But
Aw.
it happens quite a
And they're
bit.
normally pretty nervous too.
Yeah, and I mean, the moderators kind of have a way of wrapping that up without being rude, but they just don't know, but it still kind of makes me laugh.
And then there's the desire chip speech. Some people pick up a
It's been
desire.
a long road.
yeah. So you get both, but I relocated. I was very fortunate. I stayed in New Orleans for close to 4 years, and I became an active member of the group, going to business meetings. I was the chairman of the group for
How
a
many
while.
people in that group? Like, just average meeting?
30 maybe.
30?
Maybe on a good weekday, but they have the same cast of characters we have.
Oh yeah.
And whenever I'm fortunate enough to talk to one of them, somebody will call me and say something, I'll ask, so-and-so still there? Because you also have your part of the characters that may only come on Tuesdays, Saturdays, and Thursdays or something like that. And down there, what I really like, Saturday, the second Saturday of every month is a speaker meeting. And it isn't like the Koala Club. It's not that big. They sit down at the chair in the front. You can get a podium if you want it. And then every Tuesday night, they have a 12 and 12 study where you know, somebody has agreed to do the 12 and 12 study, and every Thursday they have a big book study. So you have both of those, right? And so the Tuesdays and Thursdays, you might have people that show up just for the big book study and stuff. And but you just, I mean, I actually never dove into the 12 and 12. When I got there, I was 7.5 years sober.
Yeah.
I never dove into it. And then so I think that it took a leap of faith. But once I got in there, and so there's another place called the Back Porch, and it's about 4 miles down the road, right, from this place is called Serenity on the Lake is the name of the clubhouse, and the meeting was called the Mandeville Group. So, but right down the road is the Back Porch, and every time I go to the Back Porch, though, I felt like a newcomer. You know, you go down there and a whole another group of people, some of the same. You know, when you go tell your story at the Back Porch, you feel like, you know, you're something special, you know, and every once in a while, some of the Back Porch people will sneak into your meeting, you know, and you'll see them. And, but, you know, I can honestly say that those folks made me, you know, they turned me into one of them, you know, and then I come back to Shreveport. It's where I moved back up here to Bossier. And one of my first thoughts is, we need to get a moderator. We're doing it wrong. You know, one of my first thoughts when I got down there was, they're doing it wrong. You know? And I get up here and I'm thinking, we need to get a moderator. You need to be 2 people, you know. And,
Yeah.
And of course, that's a quick thought. And you realize, man, it has nothing to do with nothing. Man, it's just how the meetings are.
Right. Colorado's meetings were way different. They didn't do chips. Well, I mean, this isn't all of them, but one I went to didn't do chips at all.
I think we're one of the only groups or areas that even give their sobriety date. Most places don't even give a sobriety date, and that's humbling when you're used to telling people how long you've been sober, and now you can't. That sucks.
Yeah, I mean,
You know, how's that
Are you
chick
supposed
over
to
there?
brag
No,
on
I've been
yourself,
sober 30. You know, but yeah,
I do like when it gives sobriety dates though, because it kind of puts in context what you're hearing, you know, and like not saying that 20 years of sobriety means that there's necessarily the most wisdom, or that somebody brand new doesn't have something
and to
awesome
be honest
to
with
say.
you, I've heard people share in meetings, and they'll say some stuff, and you're like, wow. And then they'll be like, and I'm telling you, in this 2.5 weeks I've been sober, my entire life has changed.
I got out of jail yesterday, and
you're like, whoa, you know, you know, so maybe a little more experience in there, but that's okay. You know, obviously you dove into a big book pretty quick, so
sure.
I mean, overall, you know, when I do think about the moves that I've made, it was hard. It was hard when I moved, you know, to Monroe. It was hard when I moved to Colorado, and it was hard when I moved back. And that will be for anybody moving because it's just change.
You often wonder, and our friend Phil moved from Shreveport after 35 years at the Koala Club.
Oh, God.
To Houston, you know, and I talked to him, and you know, Phil can make friends anywhere at any time.
Guys, if you don't know Phil, just always think of like John Wayne in my head. I mean, he's just
1.
Yeah, he's just busted in there.
I think 2 or 3.
Okay, just kidding.
Phil's episode 2 or 3, but he moved to Houston, and I often wonder, in the back there, somewhere in his conscience, does he have that same nervousness that I had, you know, after, I don't know, 7.5 years of recovery, having to go to a whole new home group?
I think so. You know, my sponsor moved to Alexandria when she was like 20 something years sober. And I remember her telling me she didn't like it. She didn't know anybody. She felt lonely. You know, you're used to being you and everybody knows you, and all of a sudden you're having to introduce yourself like you're in, you know, grade school. And, you know, I like to, you know, roller skate in my free time, and I don't know, just.
Yeah. Almost like you have to come up with a complete resume. But the truth is, I mean, you don't. In reality, you just share in every meeting, and people, if you have the recovery and the experience, strength, and hope that needs to be shared, people are going to gravitate towards you because you have something that they want. Mm-hmm. You know, and then there's people who are gravitate towards you because you have something that they want, right? But you have to be able to distinguish the ones that need some I don't want to say spiritual guidance like I'm some kind of guru, but some of those who may need help in their recovery. And then you also have to think about your recovery. Who here is going to be my new sponsor?
Yes.
Because I've got to get a sponsor. I'm way too far away from my sponsor, right? And nowadays, I pick up a phone, call him, every so often and talk through whatever, But when I moved to New Orleans, I definitely needed a new sponsor. And Phil was my sponsor when I moved to New Orleans. Nothing against Phil, but Phil sponsored about 30 guys, right?
Oh.
Yeah, he sponsored a whole gang. And I say 30, that might be pushing it, but I bet it was at least 20. And so I needed someone that I could see every day at a meeting because of that shock value of diving off into a pond I didn't understand.
Yeah.
So, but we all feel it, and it's a great excuse to quit going to meetings. But that's not a sustainable solution to recovery.
Yeah. You have to put yourself out there.
You have to put yourself out there. You got to feel it again. You got to go. Look for the similarities, not the differences. Speak in every meeting.
Yeah.
But put one foot in front of the other and here's the deal. If you have any kind of recovery, you know that you can pray before you go in there and say, God, I do not have the ability to walk in there and do this. I need you to do this. I'm just going to go, and I need you to be there. And God's grace will be already waiting for you when you get there. You just don't realize it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And then you get to tap into that and use it. So
I was visiting Mississippi a few years ago. I was still married back then. We went over there for Thanksgiving. It was Thanksgiving morning, and I was early in sobriety, and I looked up. There was a meeting at 10 o'clock on Thanksgiving. So I go, and it's in this cinder block building. It used to be a bar, and they turned it into a clubhouse. And even had the Fighting Irish guy painted on the side of the wall. And the bar, they had coffee and donuts and all that stuff. It was a beautiful building. But I get there. Again? It was in Mississippi in Jackson.
Okay, because this happened to me in Ruston.
Yeah. It was really cool. I mean, it was a cool building. But anyway, I get in there, and there's two people, a man and a lady, both of them with decades of sobriety. They were a married couple, and they did that meeting. Well, Thanksgiving, I was the only person there, and I'm about 9-10 months sober. And then they were just like, pull up a chair, and we sat and talked. And I was sketchy about going in there. I'm like, nobody's in here, they're going to ask me stuff. I ended up talking to them the whole time because they kept asking me, and it was great. But the fear of going in, it ended up being one of my favorite meetings I've ever been to.
You know, so many people probably pulled in. There's only 2 cars and left.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could probably, especially visitors, are like, I ain't nobody here, and I'm not going to be the only one sharing.
Exactly.
And we read the readings and all that stuff, and then they went, tell us what's going on. And then that's what we did, and we just talked. And
that was awesome.
It was great. And still one of my favorite meetings. But I pulled in, was like, ain't nobody here. This is in a bar building. Like, you can tell.
That takes a lot of courage for someone just to walk through knowing there's no one in there.
Yeah, and then you go in, and it's dark,
never been.
And there's 2 people sitting in this big room looking at you like, come on in. I'm like, okay.
Well, when I was on my first pass, where I went to treatment, to come home, you had to go to a meeting every day. And I drove to a meeting, sat there, and drove off.
Yeah, I've done that.
And I was like, oh, hell no. I couldn't do it. Yeah. And I hadn't been to, an outside meeting. I mean, by myself. I was just like, nope, not going to do it.
I think the point we really need to make, a newcomer especially, that listen to, we've all been there.
Yes.
We have all moved. We've all had to go to that meeting we didn't want to go to. Some of us, like me, are introverts that really does not like doing this. I do not like being in unfamiliar territory. And I can tell you what, I can go a while without being around familiar people and be around them again and all of a sudden feel unfamiliar.
Yeah.
Like it just like I'm kind of, I'm just gonna go chill here over here. Y'all are, I know you, but I don't want to stay out of my business. But so guys, I was just looking at this the other day. We have 6,399 plays. Like somebody has listened to the show. 6,300.
Really?
Yes.
Were we just like at 100 the other day?
No.
Oh.
No, I don't. Yeah.
I mean, at one point we were.
Well, yeah. The other year. We have 149 followers on Spotify. I don't know about any of the other platforms. I can tell you that Spotify and Apple Music now are about 50-50.
Okay.
Yeah, they're running real close. iHeartRadio, I looked it up the other day. You can get on there. Wondery is about the only platform you can't find Amazon Music. You can find our podcast on Amazon Music. And our latest country is still just Russia. And now I'm not saying just Russia, like it's a huge country. But those are basically the analytics. I have a wheel somewhere that shows who listens on what format, but it's mainly Spotify and Apple Podcasts right now. And I could pull the analytics, some of it just really doesn't matter. But and I'll pull top 100 every so often. It doesn't change very much, especially 75 people in the last 7 days have listened. So unless they all listen to the same episode, it really didn't, drop a whole lot of anybody or anything. So we do appreciate our listeners. And if you want to communicate with us or see what's going on, you can look at our page, and that is on grouchandbrainstorm.com. I haven't personally been. My daughter takes care of the page and takes care of 2 new babies. So, but she does take care of the page, and she calls me YouTube. You should be able to do that by the end of the week. You should be able to go to YouTube and pull up all of our episodes as well. Obviously, it's just going to be audio, with our logo thing up there, and then just the audio in the background. But and we have a couple of folks that actually support us through subscriptions, and we do thank them very much. I do appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you to all of our listeners.
And anybody that listens, anytime you listen to the show, you're supporting the show and giving it a purpose, right? So that we don't just talk to ourselves, which I could still do that. I could still sit up here, to be honest with you, and not publish a single episode.
Well, yeah.
And
all that stuff we talk about, it's cool that people are listening to other countries, and all that stuff's great. And it's fun to talk about all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, the best part of this is what we all, when it started, was for somebody to hear it that needed to hear it and maybe help them along a little bit.
And we've got a few of those.
We do.
Yeah.
And occasionally somebody comes up and is like, hey, man, I listened. And that's what it's all about. So,
We actually do have a few that have listened, and it has helped them. And so that's the goal.
Yes,
right
it
there.
is.
So we keep on keeping on. But I think that's it for this episode on moving or relocating during recovery and our experience with it. Anyway, we can't really do anything but give our experience.
That's right.
So from I think any birthdays or anything before we sign out?
not that I know of. We do have some recurring bonus catch-up episodes coming up with a few people. One of them I'm working on is Hayden. So if he'll tighten up and quit working so much, we want to get him in here. And
I'd like to hear from Hayden. I'd like to hear from Ben. I'd like to hear from Dickie.
yes.
And that all 3 of those would be just tremendous if we could get their stories. And of course, we always have someone that I've never met come in here and tell their story. And when I get ready to edit it, I'm just like, wow, that's pretty cool right there,
Yep.
So hopefully we'll have some of those. But that's another episode. So Matt, Jill, thank y'all. And we have all 4 of us, even though he didn't speak, have been at the Rule 62 studios right here in beautiful Bossier City, Louisiana, and we've been the Grouch and the Brainstorm.